We are here today with Angel Sides, who is seeking the Ward 4 seat on the Springfield City Council in the April 2nd election. We appreciate you being here today and invite you to start by providing an opening statement that explains a little bit about who you are and why you're seeking this office.
My name is Angel Sides, and I'm a teacher and an activist, and I am also a congressional candidate. And I found out a lot of the issues I was passionate about as a congressional candidate are now being passed in a lot of cities with local resolutions and city by city. The reason I'm an environmentalist is for many years I've done a political commentary that has kind of been a little disturbing as far as the environment goes and as far as global warming. We have mass extinction of a lot of life forms on our planet. Over the last 50 years, about half of all species have died out. We have bug and insect die-off, fish and wildlife die-off, and they're attributing a lot of this to global warming. And when we have scientists like James Hansen from the NASA Goddard Institute coming out and saying if we don't keep 80% of fossil fuels in the ground, it'll be game over for the planet, that's when I decided to become an activist in a big way, an environmental activist, and this running for office is an extension of that, and it's going to be exciting for me to pass resolutions looking into solar roads and such things as our maybe the city taking over our broadband internet networks. That's what a lot of communities are doing to expand coverage, give residents cheaper and faster internet, and most importantly, to secure net neutrality, a huge issue where we have slow and fast lanes putting small businesses under. We may end up paying for more applications such as Facebook and Twitter. And most importantly, if we maintain our net neutrality, we maintain our freedom of speech online, where if I were wanting to, see information that might affect people's health, but it counters big business or big government, we might not have that information anymore. We'll be censored, much like North Korea.
So you live in Ward 4. What are you seeing as the pressing issues facing that ward? And if elected, how would you work to attract or to address those issues?
Well, I have a lot of complaints about, like the leaves not being drained out of the street drains. They're clogged up with leaves, and even when people call in, no one comes out. Last winter, we had a lot of winter days where we had sleet and ice and our roads weren't salted. In my subdivision, we have, things such as a lot of weeds and things like that. People complain about different things about fast traffic on certain streets within Ward 4. They'd like to see maybe more stop signs put up, gates that aren't visible at night, that if someone wouldn't know the street, they would run into, issues such as this. Nothing major, but a lot of little things that need to be taken care of. And I've called a lot of them in, and I need to find the time to, follow up on that and see if that they have been taken care of. Okay. And I'm just doing that as the precinct committeeman too.
What are some of the areas where speeding and traffic is a problem?
I believe, to be sure, I had all this information in front of me when I called them in, but I think North and 8th Street
Okay.
and maybe on Griffith, but I can't be sure about that. I would need to look at my precinct list.
Okay, great.
Looking citywide, one of the pressing issues facing Springfield as a whole is homelessness.
Yeah.
So how would you, as an elected official, work to solve or to address the homelessness issue here?
Well, what other communities have done, and I believe in doing the research involved and finding out what works in other communities. They have, like the community, well, everyone knows the community of Seattle tried to tax Amazon. They passed a resolution, but then they repealed it because Amazon sent out their workers and they stopped work until they repealed that resolution. So a lot of workers went, they were really irate and they protested and everything. So, but San Francisco did something else. It wasn't really a head tax like what was in Seattle. They did a global revenue tax where they multiply the total revenue for big business by like a proportionate increment, and then it's based on business, like business categorized, so that was something that they still have to help the homeless population in San Francisco. So
they use
and
it to
it wasn't repealed.
They use it to provide resources and programs in San Francisco. I'm not familiar with
Basically a revenue generator for resources.
Well, it was to get the homeless off the street. I know that,
Okay.
And it was a tax on big business, which amounted to millions of dollars a year.
Got
So-
it. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Another issue we see the city facing is the need for more economic development. So how can Springfield go about attracting more businesses here?
Well, one thing we could do is advertise what we have a little better, so people know, this is a tourist attraction. Because after all, we have a water park, we have all the Lincoln sites, and museums and so forth. I think, if people knew everything that we had, like any really much larger city than we are, I think that it could be a vacation destination, or at least a stop on the way to somewhere else. And I think that would be one thing. I think my idea of solar roads would attract tourism because they light up, and they're smart roads that they're coming out with now that are computerized, and they could be programmed to look like brick roads. We need to keep putting money into our older houses and really clean up our city. We need better waste services, waste pickup services. I've been talking about I don't know if you have a separate question on waste. A bottle recycling program, or it's really a bottle deposit recycling program, and that is where you have what are called reverse vending machines. Instead of putting a quarter in, getting something out, you can scan a bottle, or glass bottle or plastic bottle, and you get a nickel back. So a lot of communities have these right now, and it's something that can be done city by city. Anyway, the vendors I've talked to, I've called a few big business headquarters, including Starbucks, and they said, yeah, they would do it just, by a city. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't have to be something that would have to be passed through the legislator. But I don't know if that's true. I'm still researching it. But I think that would be a possibility, even if it's just, a limited amount that could be recycled. Another thing some cities are doing, like the city of San Francisco, is also a zero waste community, where they have taken over their waste management services, and the city, it's billed revenue for the city, plus they've taken over their recycling services. So if that's something that Springfield could do eventually, Well, I think the broadband network would be revenue as well, that I mentioned in my introduction. But the waste and recycling services, we could have our own assembly line of recycling, like San Francisco, and have our own products, like, I don't know, Lincoln souvenirs, or sell things across state lines, because I mean, that would be a little more cost effective than, transporting all our waste to China like we were doing at some point. So cities are taking these over city by city, and San Francisco also composts their branches and waste that they pick up, as far as branches and leaves. They compost all that and they sell it to farmers.
You touched on tourism and, what the city could be doing better, but, as far as other types of business, how could the city try to recruit, and what kind of business would you like to see the city focusing on trying to recruit?
Well, it sounds like we're going to have another college here in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the labor unions recruiting people and training them, here in the city. So we have all that economic stimulus kept in our city. But I mean, what businesses should we attract? Other, like just to somehow,
like manufacturing,
yeah.
technology, more medical, build on the medical district, things like that. Any of those you'd like to see the city tackle?
Well, I mean, it seems like half our city is a hospital. I don't know if there's a need for it, but I'm thinking, geez, how many sick people do we have? It seems like everywhere you go, there's a hospital here in Springfield. But yeah, I mean, I think whatever the need is, but I'd have to research that a little more.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anything I've wanted that I haven't. It seems like we have a little bit of everything, restaurants and shopping. What I would like to see is an increase in the minimum wage, maybe just for big business, because the community, the city of Seattle increased their minimum wage, and other cities have, and then, a few years later, that's when small businesses also had to pay the minimum wage increase, so that there was 3 to 5 years, big business paid it right away to stimulate the economy, and then the small businesses paid later. But I mean, it really, I would think, since we're not as big as Seattle, maybe there could just be an ongoing separation between big business and small business, because why should that take effect ever, really? People want a redistribution of wealth, and that would be another way, for that.
Okay.
And that should stimulate the economy. Here in Springfield.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
The city is contributing $250,000 a year to the new Land of Lincoln Economic Development Corporation. Do you favor that funding, and how do you think the EDC is doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, is this where they're paying for underprivileged, like, social, economic, like, poor people to take free classes? And
No, this is the Economic Development Corporation that's tasked with trying to identify and attract business and retain business. The county is contributing money, and so is the city.
Well, I don't know much about that, really. I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it seems like, I'll say this about it, anytime you have these projects where there's all this development, and just, I have to say this because going door to door, a lot of people complain that, you know, we have, and that's just the problem. How is it coming? Because we have all these tax dollars, millions of dollars being thrown here and there, and people hear it at the city council meetings, but it doesn't seem like we have accountability for how that money's spent. And, you know, at the same time, our taxes go up and up and up. And yeah, we need development. Of course we do. But I think what people are wanting is just to have a little accountability, like a third party going in and looking at the books once in a while. And that goes for any entity, the labor unions, you know, statewide. Supposedly this college is going to be like $50 million. I mean, I thought we were broke. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money.
You brought up taxes, that people are paying more. The city council has, over the last 2 years, approved several tax increases. An increase to the hotel motel tax, an increase to the sales tax, an increase to the telecom tax. I know you weren't on council at that time, but if you were, do you think you would have voted to increase those taxes?
Well, I think you have to look at profits earned, and you know, some of those hotels are small businesses, but you know, like and that's kind of what I was getting at, like the major chains and the big businesses that, you know, are chains all over the country, or even worldwide. Those are the businesses that people are wanting taxed more so, you know, than, you know, just the small motels trying to get by. Okay. So yeah, I would agree to that with stipulations.
Okay. The city's financial situation has stabilized this year. The budget discussions going on now for next year's budget are certainly not as concerning as the past 2 years. If you were on the council, what principles would you look at when deciding whether to vote for a budget or not? What
like I said, I would want to see accountability, and people come back year after year. You got to look what they've done with the money in the past, but even a little, like a third party where there's a little more detailed look at the books of what they're spending and where that money's going. I think that is what people are asking for here in Springfield.
Okay. Pensions are eating up a larger share of the city's budget every year for police and fire. Springfield's certainly not the only municipality with that problem. It's a problem throughout the state, and the legislature does limit in a lot of ways what the city can do to address that. But what types of pension reforms would you advocate for as a member of council?
Well, I was for a long while getting signatures for the Capital Township to be dissolved, or if the duties of the Capital Township to be taken over by the city. I shouldn't say dissolved, but I think with that should free up some money, considering supposedly just 50% of every dollar was being spent on services, or used for the homeless and so forth. That extra revenue should be used to catch up the police and firemen's pensions.
So you would be in favor of the city, not the county, taking over the township?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because the borders outline the city exactly, and it makes more sense that when it's our tax money and the residents of Springfield's tax money, that it be taken over by the city.
Okay.
And used here in the city.
One of the hot topics over the last couple of years is what should go on the Y block. So what do you think should go on that land right across from the governor's mansion?
Well, I like the idea of a park because, and maybe I'm confused, but isn't that where the proposed UI, or the Southern Illinois University building, is supposedly going to be placed?
Possibly. That's the proposal that's out there, but it certainly has not.
Yeah.
No approval whatsoever. Just an idea.
I also like the idea of a park because, for one thing, we have supposedly a much less percentage of trees and wildlife in Springfield than compared to other cities our size. And so we kind of need something downtown to kind of be the lungs of downtown, because there's a lot more pollution, of course, and everything, So I think a park is a good idea myself. I like the idea.
Would you be in favor of the type of park they were talking about last year, or something more with like other people have talked about splash pads or skating rinks? What type of park are you envisioning?
I read about that. I thought that sounded really neat. I think I like that idea.
Okay. This magazine, Governing, recently ran a series of articles in which Springfield figured prominently, and it basically argued that our city has multiple race-based inequalities. Did you see that series?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your reaction to it?
Well, I just, the few times I've been in at the city council, just to, voice my opinion here and there for the environment, and show up, there's been, talk of certain entities not having black African American employees, and I just, and the last one I saw, they said, well, no one applied. We didn't have any applications, but when I ran for Congress, I went door to door on the east side, and there were people saying they needed a job and they wanted a job. So I find that hard to believe. I think that should be investigated a little more. I don't want to accuse or point fingers, but I think that's part of the problem. There's not enough jobs to begin with, but then I still think we're dealing with discrimination. And, CWLP was another one.
How do you think city government, city council members can go about improving race relations here?
Well, I think a lot of people complain because, and a lot of people that live on the east side, because maybe they're not getting TIF money to fix up the east side. There's a lot of rentals and houses being rented out over there. So I think one thing, we need to have more homeowners, because when people own their home, they take care of it better. Maybe classes in school, in high school, teaching people about money management and being able to, get their credit score high enough. But like home ownership and some TIF money for the east side, and some of those houses are historical too. And I think, we need to pay more attention so that more people want to live on the east side, and then there's less segregation here in Springfield. And I really, running for Congress, have to say this because I read a lot, because I was bringing up the opioid crisis a lot. And there's, I'd have to say quite a few articles out there. When you read about drugs, they say the African community's targeted for drugs. So I think the Springfield police really need to start bringing in or get the drugs out of our city, even if, and I'm not talking about the small time drug dealer, but the major players, even if that, leads to powerful players, they need to be brought to justice, and we need to get the drugs out of our city.
All right, we thank you, Angel, for meeting with us today and invite you to give a brief closing statement as to why voters should choose you to prevail on Election Day.
Well, I'm not afraid to name names and voice my opinions against powerful forces. I believe in doing the research involved with finding out what I need to find out to make a decision in how to vote. And I was like this all my life, and in college as well. I had a very high GPA. But if you want someone who will do the work, who will get out and hear what the residents of Ward 4 have to say, I am giving my contact information as precinct committeeman and running for city council. And I plan on holding meetings, and I want them to be interesting, educational, and have allow everyone to voice their opinion. And so if that sounds good to you, get out and vote on April 2nd. And I'm also saying Angel sides with you. A little pun on my name.